Hey there, Space Cats, and welcome to a new series illustrating fairy tales. I am really excited to do this after making a couple of videos last year on Rapunzel and Hansel and Gretel, both of which I will link upstairs. Make sure you subscribe if it's your kind of thing, because I'll be making a fairy tales video every other week, interspersed with a useful advice video on how to get indie published. Let's jump into making Princess and the Pea, starting with what you'll need. To start, I've got some watercolour paper, which I've done a drawing on already, some pigment liners and fine liners, some coloured pencils for doing some detail later, watercolour paints and tubes as well, just in case I can't find the colour that I want in here. Eraser to rub out the pencil lines when I'm ready. So the first job is to get the black lines done. So I've got here my 0.2 Staedtler pigment liner. I'm just going to start drawing in some of these details. The Princess and the Pea is a story written by Hans Christian Andersen, first published in 1835. And apparently he had the inspiration from hearing a similar story when he was a child. And this is the story. There was once a prince who wished to marry a princess, but she must be a real princess. He travelled all over the world in hopes of finding such a lady, but there was always something wrong. Princesses he found in plenty, but whether they were real princesses, it was impossible for him to decide. For now one thing, now another seemed to him not quite right about the ladies. At last he returned to his palace, quite cast down because he wished so much to have a real princess for his wife. One evening, a fearful tempest arose. It thundered and lightened, and the rain poured down from the sky in torrents. Besides, it was dark as pitch. All at once there was heard a violent knocking at the door, and the old king, the prince's father, went out himself to open it. It was a princess who was standing outside the door. What with the rain and the wind, she was in a sad condition. The water trickled down from her hair, and her clothes clung to her body. She said she was a real princess. "Ah, we shall soon see that," thought the old Queen Mother. However, she said not a word of what she was going to do, but went quietly into the bedroom, took all the bedclothes off the bed and put 3 little peas on the bedstead. Then she laid 20 mattresses, one upon another, over the 3 peas, and put 20 feather beds over the mattresses. Upon this bed, the princess was to pass the night. The next morning, she was asked how she had slept. "Oh, very badly indeed," she replied. "I have scarcely closed my eyes the whole night through. I do not know what was in my bed, but I had something hard under me, and am all over black and blue. It has hurt me so much." Now it was plain that the lady must be a real princess, since she has been able to fill the 3 little peas through the 20 mattresses and 20 feather beds. None but a real princess could have had such a delicate sense of feeling. The prince accordingly made her his wife, being now convinced that he had found a real princess. The 3 Ps were, however, put into the cabinet of curiosities, where they are still to be seen, provided they are not lost. Wasn't this a lady of real delicacy? Well, what are we to make of this tale of royal oversensitivity to bed-dwelling vegetables? I can't help wishing the princess could toughen up a bit. She does come across as a bit feeble. I guess back in the days when this was written, men and women had very different roles, and it's only in recent decades, maybe since the Second World War, that women have realised that they can do just as much as men, and that men can take on roles that had traditionally been women's. If we look at this analytically, I wonder if it's a story about trying to decipher who people really are. The prince can't find the right person for him, and he doesn't know how to find her. The Queen Mother in this story has a way of finding the true nature of a person. It could also be a story about those who are elite and rich, born into aristocracy, who are incapable of understanding true suffering. Or maybe it could be the tale of a woman suffering from a condition like fibromyalgia, where every position is uncomfortable and even a tiny pea can cause pain. The thing I do like about the story is the thought of all those mattresses and blankets piled up on a 4-poster bed. I rather fancy the idea of sleeping on a bed like that for a night. I wouldn't mind being a princess just once, but I have to be a feisty one. None of this relying on a prince nonsense. If you've been watching closely, you'll see that I've used some wet in wet technique, where I wet the paper first and then brush on wet watercolour pigment, and sometimes wet on dry, where the paper is dry but the paintbrush is, as before, wet with paint. The difference between the two is how much control you have over the pigment spread. In that curtain area, I wanted the feeling of draping fabric hanging down from the 4-poster bed, so it sort of seemed natural to me to use wet in wet. The pigment then finds its own place to settle and makes it look more like folded cloth. Sometimes though, like in some of the mattresses, I wanted to get a crisp line, so I used dry paper. You also get more of a saturated colour with this method. I also wanted to do some details and a little bit of the shading using the watercolour pencils that I've got. It was helpful to give some texture and patterns to the mattresses and also to the princess's nightdress. Although, to be honest, I could have easily done that with watercolour paint and a brush too. These watercolour pencils are absolutely fantastic and I love them because you can blend the colours so nicely. So that's a red and a yellow together, and then using a wet brush just blend it very carefully together and it makes a really lovely texture. Then just a last little bit of curtain action with some darker purple, just very loosely spread over those upper bits to give a bit more of that folded nature of the fabric. If you'd like further artist tutorials, I have a variety of short courses that will help you. There are real-time sessions looking at painting, drawing and marker pens, among others. And if you're keen on producing your own book, there is a more in-depth course on what you need to know about self-publishing a book with illustrations. That covers making key decisions, how to make layouts and dummy books, rhythm and pacing, as well as several tutorials on illustrating a book and a look at the tech. You can either hop over to my website or join me on Patreon for more information. Go on, give it a go! Great stuff, that was very therapeutic. Why not have a go yourself? Next week I will be looking at age ranges for books and why you need to figure out who you are writing for. Until then, I am off to fluff up my mattress. Make sure there are no peas underneath it. I will see you next week. Nanu nanu.